Okay, so let's begin with a little meditation as usual. Try to quiet our mind. Maybe in this meditation we can begin to identify some of the mental factors also. So relax your body and mind. Try to set, even from the very start, even though the meditation is meant to put our mind in a quiet state, to set a positive motivation, even to motivate to set the motivation. I think I'm going to be quieting the mind now in order to develop good qualities for the benefit of all sentient beings. And focus, first of all, on the breathing. Even from the start, try to bring your attention inward, away from the senses. At the beginning, you're actually probably using the tactile sense to recognize either the raising and lowering of the abdomen or a sense of motion by the nostrils, but eventually you can be watching something more subtle, this inner motion of the energy currents in and out. Reminding yourself it's not the eye consciousness or the ear or body consciousnesses that you want to attend to. Discard your attention to them. Focus more inside. Then, as usual, bring your attention further away from the breathing to the more subtle object of just your mental consciousness itself. And now the second stage of subtlety begins, not only letting go of your attention to the outer distractions, but even the inner distractions of the various discursive thoughts, images, conversations. Try to see beyond them, through them, and focus on the clear light nature of the mind. then think of the situation that we find ourselves in within this basically clear mind due to our past actions, our karma. We experience different feelings of pleasure, discomfort, or neutral feelings as one of the main ways that karma ripens on our experience. And because of our ego grasping, this gives rise to attachment for what is pleasurable, sensing it as true and seeking it out, trying to keep it longer, not always aware of the karmic consequences, that this has arisen because of our virtuous karma, not because of the outer conditions we're creating now, that we're using up the resource of virtue, of merit. And pursuing pleasurable feelings, usually done out of attachment, we create negative karma to be without in the future. Uncomfortable feelings give rise to aversion, desiring to be free of them, sometimes even expressing itself in body and speech as verbal abuse and harmful actions of body. All living beings within cyclic existence who've not yet eliminated all of the delusions, this ego grasping from their mind stream, are in exactly the same situation. Under the influence of karma and klesha, our past actions and our emotional or afflictive response now to the karma that's ripening. I think for their benefit, all living beings wanting so desperately to be happy, but not knowing the best way to find that, wanting to be free of suffering, but actually creating the cause in attempting to be free, creating the cause of more suffering. I think for their benefit, for my own benefit also, I'm going to investigate better the mind, to get familiar with this laboratory, inner laboratory, that we can perform the great spiritual experiments through that familiarity, to be able to develop the good qualities and eliminate the negative faults, like in the word sangye, to eliminate all that's negative and to expand all that is positive. So I think I'm going to listen tonight and study this course. Whatever obstacles, whatever sometimes particular facts may not seem so important, as the Buddha taught this material, great pundits and yogis and yoginis of the past have studied in order to sharpen their minds, to understand the Buddha's teachings, to understand better what meditation is about by understanding the mind. So for that purpose, I'm going to listen to the teachings tonight, engage in this study and contemplation. And then relax. Bring your attention back to the present.
Wow.
That must have been that electromagnetic pulse that zapped your computer yesterday, Dorji. Was that? That was the discharge of Georgie's mind. Okay. So, what do you think? Are you beginning to get some clarity about the mind, or is it more unclear? More unclear. Venerable, what do you think? Something? Confused? Any questions? You have a question? No? No questions?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah. That's a good, I was checking who has questions, because that means
It means they're studying.
they're studying. I won't say the other way around. People without questions, okay.
Doesn't mean they're studying, that just doesn't mean they understand anything of what George is saying, so that's what appeals to me. Page 23.
Yes.
In the middle of the page, there is these two, like this intention is mental action. In general, there are two types of actions. Actions that are intentions and intended actions. So is number one like the mental impulse, and number two is the bodily and verbal actions that follow?
Yes. And because if you see two little stanzas later, where it says intended actions are of two types, physical actions and verbal actions.
That's body and speech.
Body and speech, physical
And
meaning.
intention would be the actions that are intentions.
Intention is the mental factor, what it says, actions that are the mental factor intention that actually creates karma. That's the main way that we create karma, because even when we do engage in physical and verbal actions, we're motivated by the mind. We're motivated by mental intention. And depending on what's present in the mind, whether they're virtuous or non-virtuous factors. Like, for instance, the question came up today in the elder hostel about killing. Of course, in general, we say one of the precepts of Buddhism is not to engage in killing. But there's always the example the great lamas give of Shakyamuni Buddha when he was a bodhisattva, who actually, out of compassion, intended to kill someone. You know the story I'm talking about. So, because the mental factors that were present were not afflictions, that it said that in some there's two different traditions. Some lamas say that there was no negative karma created whatsoever. I think Lama Sopa Rinpoche tends that direction nowadays. Some lamas say that still the intention to sever the life force of another being inevitably has some karmic consequence. But because of the mental intention that's moving the mind is all motivated out of compassion, in this case, of the bodhisattva. So even the mind is being moved, it's like moving that nice silky, the example I gave, like polish, rather than a cloth rubbing sand on the tabletop, scratches it, right? But if you put underneath that nice polish, the cloth moving, like the intention moving of the mind, that actually has a beneficial effect, create virtuous karma. Okay, so here we're talking about two kinds of actions which are the mental factor intention, and actions which are motivated by it, which are intended by it, intended actions of body and speech. Okay, good question. So anyone else have? Yes, Tom.
You said, what is your personal belief about what the Buddha did in that situation?
My personal belief?
In
It
relation
doesn't
to
make, my
great
personal
karma?
belief probably doesn't make much difference. My personal belief is over some time of trying to, to see in our own life how to watch our minds, to tame our minds. It seems that is a very high state of that is required to engage in those kind of activities. It's said that the Bodhisattva, one of the Bodhisattva vows, the vows of the Bodhisattva, is not to avoid engaging in negative actions of body and speech, so that means intended actions, if it is to benefit sentient beings. So usually from the Theravada point of view, the Hinayana point of view, the monks, monastics in general, make a vow never to perform negative actions. Sometimes they're quite, some, not all, some might be very, holding very rigidly to that. Can never lie. Someone comes in the room and asking, the mafia comes in and says, "Where's Tom? We're going to kill him." And we say, "Well, that's him over there." "Oh, I cannot lie. I'm a monk." Or a person with a higher motivation, not wanting these people to create the negative karma of killing, not wanting Tom to die, they might say, "Oh, Tom, the guy that just went down on the motorcycle just 5 minutes ago, really fast, who was afraid, he just went out that way." So that would be lying, but it would be done with a bodhisattva taking the decision to take the karmic consequences upon themselves, seeing with some kind of wisdom the benefit for others. So this tendency maybe today, maybe it's good to leave some imprint in our mind, but it doesn't mean that everyone who takes bodhisattva vows should just go around killing and lying and stealing, right? It has to do with a particular situation, having clairvoyance, knowing the karmic consequences for the individual. Not being angry if you were to engage in killing, not being angry at the person, as the Buddha was not angry at this individual on the ship who was trying to scuttle the ship and kill everyone on board so he could get the wealth. But having compassion for them too, and having first tried peaceful means, and then use influence, like of the 4 different kinds of actions. Peace and power or influence. And then maybe when you don't have any success in that and there's a great need then to engage in that. So I think that's something that's definitely possible, and it's good to keep in our mind. It's said in the teachings, the Mahayana teachings, that the keeping of the vows without an understanding of emptiness is not really keeping the vows. The Buddha explained in many situations. Thinking, like the Buddha said, if there were a dream piece of, what's it called, cream cheesecake, illusory cream cheesecake here, and not recognizing it as illusory, just meditating on this cream cheesecake is impermanent, it's suffering, these different aspects of the First Noble Truth. What? Impermanent, suffering, what? Empty and selfless. Meditating on that without understanding emptiness, thinking empty is different meaning of empty, that's not actual skillful method. That monk would be trying to use these temporal antidotes, but not seeing that it's actually an illusory piece of cake. Cream cheesecake. Love that illusory cream cheesecake. So the same thing with the vows. If one is holding very rigidly to the vows and thinking of them as just rules and so forth, without an understanding of emptiness, one could think that this is, maybe the Buddha made a mistake, or this is some kind of aberration. But I think it comes out of that kind of wisdom. Okay. Anyone else have, from what we've done so far, a question? Was that a question, LaDonna, or that was scratching your eye? Okay. How about you guys? No? Chris? No? You're good? Marcy? Sister? You had no questions? Okay. So let's go on a little bit further. Last time we finished the mental factor intention, right? In Tibetan, sempa. Actually, the word sem is the same word that those of you who are studying Tibetan that means mind, which means chitta, right? But here it's chetana in Sanskrit, sempa. It's not just the word sem by itself, not just one syllable. Sempa. Okay. Now, the next one is a word in Sanskrit called sparsha. You know that from the pujas you do? Sparsha vajra, you know. Sparsha means what? Touch or contact, right? So this is in Tibetan called rekpa. This is a mental factor. Almost sounds at first glance, almost sounds like some physical occurrence, right? Contact. So one has to understand what the meaning is, the definition. So this is, in the sequence of events, this has to precede both feeling and discrimination. It will always come first before feeling and discrimination. In fact, both of the definitions, I think, of feeling and discrimination mentioned about arising after, what did it say, condensation or something? How did it say? Remember? Let's say the one about discrimination. So first was feeling, then the discrimination. Because of the 5 aggregates, those are centered out specially, right? Now the third one, contact, actually precedes them. The definition of discrimination, what did we have here? Knowing upon aggregation in the response there. It says, it has the characteristic of knowing upon aggregation. That means upon the actualization of contact, which is the bringing together of the faculty, the sense faculty, and the consciousness and its intended object, then that is a condition to give rise to discrimination and to feeling. Okay, so let's see. Yeah.
Is there a special reason why then it is numbered as number 3 and not number 1?
You could put it in other order, but I think, like in the 5 aggregates, feeling and discrimination are divided out in the 5 aggregates from the other mental factors, right? Of the 5 aggregates, one of them is physical, and the other 4 are all mental, or let's say conscious, right? So feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, although it includes other things, here it includes all the other mental factors. And then the last aggregate is primary consciousness. We've already studied a little bit about the difference between primary consciousness and mental factors, right? So here's mind, here's body, here's primary mind, and here's all the mental factors. Because these two are so important, perhaps that's the reason that they're labeled first here, feeling and discrimination. These are indeed, those first mental factors are indeed the same things that are meant by the aggregates. Let's say, but the feeling aggregate means all of the aggregate, the pile or heap, skanda of all of the feelings, whether it be in the eye consciousness, ear, nose, tongue, body, mental, all of them within your continuum. That constitutes the feeling aggregate. Whereas if you just say feeling, you might just be talking about eye feeling or the feeling of your body consciousness. Okay. So, what is contact? Did we start this last time?
No.
Yeah, sure.
Because you were saying contact had to come before feeling and discrimination, but does it also have to come before intention? Because under intention, when it lists the 6 possibilities, it says intention arising from contact upon the aggregation of the 3.
What does it say?
Under intention, when it divides it into the 6, in terms of the base, it says intention arising from contact upon the aggregation of the visible form.
Right.
But,
So
and
this
that's the
contact,
same wording that it has for feeling and discrimination.
Yeah.
So it's
Contact is like the first, is what actualizes the, let's say if we talk about the physical senses, to be able to give rise to these other mental factors. What?
I don't know, somehow with intention, because if that can be in the mind first, is there some way you could have intention before contact?
Well, the mental contact, you'd have to check. If you're talking about motivating yourself to engage something with your other senses, there's something in the mind first. There had to be a mental factor called contact that gave rise to the ability of one moment of consciousness to act as the faculty, mental faculty. So its contact is something that actualizes the faculty. Let's see. Let's look. Become a little bit clearer, maybe. So, what is contact? Siki's put question and response here. It just doesn't say that in the Tibetan or the Sanskrit. It just says, "What is contact?" It distinguishes the transformation of the sense power upon the aggregation of the three. That means it makes, distinguishes the transformation of the sense power upon aggregation of the three. The three are what? Father, Son, and Holy Ghost? What's the three? Carrie?
Maid, Mother, and Crone.
I shouldn't have asked you that. The three here means what? You don't know. I thought you were just joking because you knew. That's not fair to make a joke if you don't know. The three conditions, the dominant condition. What are the three? Dominant condition, the immediate condition, and the object condition. Those three conditions, all in the Abhidharma, always says for a mental phenomenon to arise, those three conditions always have to be present. Otherwise, the consciousness cannot rise. Without a faculty, a dominant condition, empowering condition, there's no way that the consciousness has some basis for its action. Without an object, it doesn't have anything to know. Without a previous moment of consciousness to act as the springboard, as the continuity for the next instant, there's no continuity of consciousness. Like, so for instance, we say, oh, now the stream of water will come here. There's no stream coming here, but it just sort of starts out of nothingness. You need a continuity, right? The immediate condition, immediately preceding condition. So I'm not sure about how the translation here is distinguishes. I didn't bring the Tibetan down with me. Distinguishes the transformation of the sense power upon the aggregation of the three. It has the function of acting as a support for feeling and the others. So in the text that was translated here, used for Geshe Rapton's course, contact is a distinct mental factor that by connecting the object, the organ, and the primary consciousness, those are what? Those are these three conditions, right? The coming together here, the aggregation. He says connecting these three. It activates the organ. So this is perhaps the sense of distinguishing the transformation of the sense power. So it activates the faculty before the mental factor contact arises within the consciousness. The consciousness may be there in the faculty, but until the mental factor contact arises, the faculty is not fully activated to act as a basis for that mental phenomena. Where was I reading here? Distinct mental factor that by connecting the object, the organ, and the primary consciousness activates the organ. It is said to activate the organ or faculty since due to its cooperation, the organ is transformed into an entity with the ability to act as the basis for feelings of pleasure, pain, and indifference. Does the faculty feel pleasure, pain, and indifference? She's thinking yes. You're saying no. No. Remember the Vaibhashika said that the faculty could actually be a valid cognizer, right? Kind of imply that it could experience suffering and pleasure. Feelings are mental phenomena, so the sense faculty itself doesn't experience that. It's just a physical entity that acts as the basis. But without that faculty, the feelings can't arise within the consciousness. Right? Okay. So next time you're giving massage, you have to think about that. Okay. It is the basis for those feelings because when a primary consciousness apprehends an object, you see? When the primary consciousness apprehends an object, it is the contact that causes the object to be experienced as something attractive or unattractive, and that gives rise to feelings of pleasure and pain. Now, this thing arising, something experienced as something attractive or unattractive, how is that? Is that like a decision you make? Ah, Clayton looks attractive tonight. I think this is just something is called attractive because it is karmically potent for you. Different. The example we gave of the dog that sees excrement is attractive, right? For us, it may not look attractive. Okay. Although it acts as the basis for feelings, it does not act as the basis for the feeling that occurs simultaneous with it. It only acts as the basis for feelings that are subsequent to it.
So when you're saying the concept is karma, that's definitely due to karma.
The arising of feelings, remember feeling, under feeling it said the main way that karma ripens on our aggregates is through the experience of feeling. That's whatever feelings we have, whether they're pleasurable, even the slightest cool breeze, like it says in the Lan Rim teachings, is all due to some virtuous karma that we've created in the past, that experience. So here, one of the things that's talked about is the time. So the contact, the mental factor contact, which acts as the basis for a particular feeling, always has to precede that because it is a cause or condition of that. All of the higher tenets, other than the Vaibhashikas, do not accept simultaneously acting cause and effect. Did we study when we talked about the Vaibhashikas in tenets, did we talk about...
It's in the book, I don't know.
We didn't mention so much in Jason Tricky Gelston's text, but it's in some of the other texts. The Vaibhashikas accept the possibility of cause and effect being simultaneous. What do you think about that, Mark? Can cause and effect be simultaneous?
From my point of view, no. I would say no.
Generally, we think causes have to precede effects because they bring about the effects the next instance, right? The Vaibhashikas say that the particular kind of thing like this, the simultaneously acting condition, or let's say the condition of, when they talk about these mental factors being simultaneous, like contact and feeling, the contact which is the basis for feeling can be simultaneous with it. So they call it simultaneously acting condition. So the other tenets say that although some condition, there are two kinds of, I want to say, let me step back a second. There are two kinds of relations. We might have talked about this before. I know what you're going to say, good relations and bad relations, right? No, there are two kinds of relationships. Causal relationships and natural relationships. If there's a relationship between two objects, they can either be causally related or naturally related. Natural relationships are taking place simultaneously. That, like the water and its heat are naturally related. In this case, the coolness of the water. This is not. I thought it was warm water. Okay. The coldness of the water and the water are naturally related. It's not one causes the other. They're present at the same time. The color of the mug and the mug. But they are not causally related. Contact, the Buddha taught, was in causal relationship to feeling and intention and so forth, as we saw earlier. It's the cause of them, causal condition. So it is, causes always have to precede, according to the upper tenets. But the Vaibhashikas said that there were some cases where they were simultaneous, like contact, that is the cause of feeling being simultaneous with it. The upper tenets would say that's not the case. From the Sautrantika point of view and from the upper tenets, they would say contact couldn't be. The contact which is the cause of feeling is always the previous moment of contact. Whenever you have some feeling, the contact which was the cause of it was the contact of the previous moment that was activating the organ. So I don't believe that contact only takes place once. You just they have the contact and then, lift off or something like that. Contact is a mental factor that continues to act. And every moment of its acting, that is, it's activating, causing, by its presence, with the consciousness being present, the object being present in the faculty The presence of this particular quality of mind activates the faculty, the sense power, so that the next moment within the consciousness can give rise to these experiences of feeling and so forth. Does that make some sense? So our text continues saying, I just have, Siggy keeps on writing, justice has been said. I don't know, sometimes we say that when we're quoting something exactly. It just says, as is said above, contact is a knower that upon aggregation of the three, object, sense power, and primary consciousness, distinguishes an object in accordance with whatever subsequent feeling, pleasure, and so pleasant feeling and so forth. This is la sopa. Remember in class today we had this sanaro sogasa sokpa. I said meant etc. and so forth. So here this would be dewa la sokpa in the Tibetan text. Whatever subsequent feeling, it distinguishes an object in accordance with whatever subsequent feeling, pleasure, and so forth that is to be experienced. So actually, contact itself is some kind of knowing of the object. It's not the same as discrimination, where you're recognizing something, right, by some sign. Remember the distinguishing characteristic of discrimination. But this is a kind of knowing. Contact is not just some kind of passive activity. It distinguishes an object in accordance with whatever subsequent feeling, pleasant and so on, that is to be experienced. So as attractive or not. Here, transformation of the sense power in the above citation is stated for the following reason. For example, due to meeting with an attractive form, the eye sense power transforms into a cause of attachment for the to the pleasant feeling. So that it transforms into a cause of pleasant feeling, which then gives rise to attachment. Likewise, contact by distinguishing an attractive form transforms into a cause of pleasant feeling. Does that make sense? What is this? Hi. When contact is differentiated in terms of its support, there are 6 kinds. And when we say support, that means the basis. These 6 kinds of consciousnesses all are supported by different sense powers. So when it says support here, or basis, it's talking about the faculty. So it could be contact that is supported upon the eye sense faculty, the ear sense faculty, nose, tongue, body, or the mental faculty. Here it says sense power. Okay? So you can see I'm one of those people. Remember we talked about some of these teachers of the past, or different people who liked the verbose and others who liked the succinct. I usually, when there's this big list of 6 things, I usually just say, just give the first one and you can kind of understand. So it's my predilection this lifetime. Contact. So this is the same word that we find when we make offerings in various rituals. When we offer physical sense, we offer sparsha, the sense of touch. But that's not meaning the same, we're not offering the mental factor, sparsha. We're offering those things which are objects of touch, smooth or warmth or, sensual, tactile sensations. So it has both meanings. Here it's referring to the mental factor, sparsha. Sparsha in general doesn't have to be a mental factor. It can mean it can mean contact, and it can mean objects of contact in some cases. Okay? So now the 5th one of the omnipresent mental factors, the kundro nga, kundu droa, we had in our Tibetan class. Yes, kundro droa, is yila chepa, or attention. And most people, I haven't seen many people translated many different ways. In Sanskrit, manaskara. There are 2 kinds of attention there's in the scriptures, here there's a very, very brief, just a couple of lines about it. But in general, when we talk about attention, this is like intention was a mental factor that moved the mind in general to an object. Attention is something that goes to a particular object within the perceptual field and holds it to that. It's different than intention. It's not creating karma. But it's very, very important because one of the big pitfalls in our practice is what the Buddha called inappropriate attention. Have you ever heard of that? What would we call it in English? Dwelling unnecessarily on something. You see... Well, no, not necessarily. Like you see Richard Gere, or I don't know, the guy sees some girl or something, and then you think, whoa, nice hair, look at those eyes. Paying attention in a way that gives rise to attachment. Or inappropriate attention can be, look at that person, they really messed me over. Not only did they say something bad about me, but they're not as high status as I am. I work harder than them. That kind of attention, that kind of mental factor, inappropriately then acting, that gives rise to the delusion. So when we talk about the causes of the delusions in the Lan Rim, the section on Lan Rim, one of the main causes is inappropriate attention. Of course, primary cause is the ego grasping being present, ignorance being present, the root. If there's no seed of anger or attachment or ego grasping in your mind, the attachment and anger and so forth, pride, jealousy, are not going to rise. So that has to be there. Also, the object. That's another cause that can give rise to the delusions. Just that even you've subdued your attachment. You're sort of calm, you've done long Vajrasattva retreat, and then someone brings you the cream cheesecake, Or you see Richard Gere, or I don't know, whoever you see. Then attachment can rise, again, from the seed, but because of the instigation of the object. Another way is through inappropriate attention. That is, so generally your mind is not in an afflicted state, but you're starting to think about something in an unskillful way. Not bad. Or bad, inappropriate attention can act in to instigate all the different delusions. So here, let's just see what it says. What is attention? It is an engagement of the mind. This is I believe this word we had in our class, jukpa, like in the bodhisattvas, engaging in the bodhisattva's activity. Engagement of the mind or operation of the mind. It has the function of holding the mind to the object of observation. So sempa, intention, kind of moves it to the object. Attention kind of keeps it there, finely, within the details. As has been said, it is a knower, a consciousness, a cognizer, that focuses the mind, which is concomitant with it, on a particular object of observation. What does that mean? Focuses the mind which is concomitant with it. Done?
The mind takes on sort of the entity of the object becomes...
Remember the terminology that's being used here. Concomitant here is talking about these 5 similarities. You could say it focuses the mind with which it bears similarities on a particular object. So a mental factor that, say, attention is, what does it say? It is a knower that focuses the mind with which it bears similarities on a particular object of observation. So it's attention that's the acting to focus, but that focuses the whole mind, just like when we were talking about doubt the other day. By the power of doubt, the whole mind is two-pointed, has qualms, right? But it's actually doubt that is doing that, the mental factor doubt. So here it's attention that's doing the focusing. You could call it mental focus. I think some people have called it that. But the whole mind then is focused because of the activity. It's not like attention is one thing you can separate out from the mind as a different entity. It's only knowable by means of this kind of mental activity of distinguishing it, Just like the emptiness of form and form are not different. They're not different entities. They're like two sides of the same coin. I mean, maybe you can take a fine saw and saw a silver dollar in half so you have a head and a tail. But what do they say in Italian? It's like the two faces of the medallion. How does it say in Italian? Anyone know this expression? Le due facce della medaglia, something like that. Like two things that can't be separated. So this mental factor can't be really separated from the mind with which it's a part. We can distinguish within the mind that faculty of the mind that we call mental primary consciousness. That's just that part of the mind, or that nature of the mind that's merely knowing the general entity of the perceptual field. The mental factors are those aspects of the mind that are engaging in particularities. Okay? What is the difference between intention and attention? Actually, they don't sound the same in Sanskrit, right? It sounds the same in English, right? Mm-hmm. Intention and attention, you might get confused. Oh, that's the same. One, intention is cetana, here it's manaskara. So what's the difference between these two? Because they're both, not just from the sound of the names, but they're both talking about some kind of movement of the mind toward an object. Intention, that's the earlier one, sempa, cetana, moves the mind to a general object or to general objects, whereas attention directs the mind to particular object. So something in particular focuses it within that. Intention moves it to the general perceptual field. Attention kind of focuses in, sometimes inappropriately, sometimes appropriately. What would be appropriate attention? If inappropriate attention is thinking, oh, wow, if I had that, I'd really be happy. If I had that, that big bag of chocolate, every night I'd have some, So that kind of inappropriate attention. Then attachment rises, then you get the wallet out and you steal it for that matter, right? Inappropriate attention. What would be appropriate attention in the same sense? Because there is Sulshin Mayimba in Tibetan. Sul means manner. Sulshin means appropriate, in according to the mode, like how things should be. Sulshin Mayimba means not according to how things should be, inappropriate, in other words. So we said Sulshin Mayimba Yila Chepa. That's inappropriate attention. So what's appropriate attention? What do you think? Focusing on the empty nature of the object, the fact that this is impermanent, it's the nature of suffering, it's selfless, it's not satisfying. Even if I had that, I wouldn't really be happy. All of these different kinds of meditations that can help to prevent klesha from arising in the mind would be appropriate attention. That would be ways of the mind attending to objects. So even if you're attracted to something, because of karma, you find something attractive and pleasant feeling arises, to guard the mind then from that inappropriate attention that starts to dwell on it and starts to make, then because of the inappropriate attention, it gets, not only you found something attractive and it was experienced as pleasure, the mind is kind of embellishing that. Yeah, oh yeah. I can see who identify with my exaggerations. Okay. Attention. Okay. I think there was something similar here in Geshe-la's book. There are two types of attention. Realistic attention, maybe that's what he's translating as appropriate. Is that right? It is? He doesn't have it here. Let me see if he has it in the definitions. I don't know. Realistic attention. He doesn't have a full thing. I imagine this might be what we're calling appropriate as opposed to inappropriate. There are two types of attention. Realistic attention, this is on page 115, i.e., when the mind is attentive of existent objects, and the other kind of attention is mistaken attention. maybe what I was saying inappropriate. I'm not sure that's the division here. When the mind is attentive of non-existent objects, like this is this is an object of real pleasure. This is really good, This is a real friend. They gave me a chocolate bar. They gave me a kiss, whatever. They're a real friend. That would be inappropriate attention, right? In any one of these 5 mental factors, or say this is sort of the discussion in general that's coming next. I'll just read Geshe-la's condensation here. If any one of these 5 mental factors, these omnipresent mental factors, if anyone should be absent from a particular perception or conception, that cognition would be unable to function or even exist. It could be kind of some situations in the Abhidharma it's mentioned when not all of them are present. Not all of them are present at very rare occurrences, such as at the time of waking up, when your senses are not quite activated yet, at the time of birth, at the time of death, at the time of going to sleep, at various times when the mind is unclear, at the time of becoming, what's the word, when you get knocked unconscious or, fall inebriated to the ground. I'm sure none of you have ever done that. Dorji, have you ever done that? Probably. So, as Lama Yeshe used to say, they will have a big samsara because they will have a big nirvana because they have a big samsara. So, if there were no feelings, so it's explaining about these 5. If they're not there, the cognition would be unable to function or even exist. That's a little strong. Maybe it means it wouldn't be fully proper cognition. 4, if there were no feeling, there would be no experience of pleasure, pain, or indifference. None of those would occur. If there were no discernment, which is how he translates what we call discrimination, no recognition or identification of the object would occur. It just sort of be, sort of like being like a drug addict, someone, or someone in a coma, or sort of spaced out. You don't recognize what's happening around you because that mental factor is not acting. If there were no intention, this mental factor that's the activating factor of karma, there would be no involvement with the object. No involvement of the object would occur. If there were no contact, there would be no basis for the occurrence of feeling. Because without the mental factor contact activating the faculty, feeling can't arise. And if there were no attention, the mind would not be directed toward any objects. You might have moved the mind from, if sempa was there, if intention was there, but you wouldn't be focused on anything. Occasionally, such as in the time of the subtle death consciousness, at the moment immediately prior to the taking of birth, and when the mind is absorbed in a cessation, some of these omnipresent mental factors are merely present in a dormant or latent state, so they're not actually present. What does that mean when the mind is absorbed in a cessation? Absorbed in a cessation. Does that mean like you've just ceased doing the crossword puzzle? Sunday morning, you just finished? You're absorbed in that? What does that mean, absorbed in cessation? Mm-hmm. Lisa, do you have? No, I don't think so. Here, there are different kinds of mental, meditative states that are called cessational absorptions. So we'll talk about them at other times too. They're the absorption without discrimination. Like, for instance, remember one of the formless realm absorptions was called not. It actually literally says. What does it say? Without discrimination, but the thing was not without subtle discrimination. Remember, one of the formless realm absorptions. So there's a certain kind of absorption that can give rise to birth in that state, which is, I think, in the Lan Rim text when we talk about the long life gods in the one of the unfree states in the, when we talk about the 8 freedoms and 10 endowments, we're free from one of the states of being born as a long life God. It doesn't mean just in general the devas. It actually is referring to this kind of long life state of these two absorptional, this cessational absorption and the discrimination absorption, where the person may born in that state, they may remain for eons without any kind of clear mind like this. Not all the mental factors are in an active state. And so they're just, maybe they experience a certain amount of bliss or contentment, very subtle, and it's just like having some, I don't know, what would it be today, some hole on the internet. Some guy is every day taking $5 out of your bank account. You know, you saw the bank account, oh, I have $1,000, not bad. Then every day, unbeknownst to you, it's always draining away. So the karma to be born in those states is using up virtue. So usually when they fall from those states, not only during that time do they create no virtue, because there's no active mind, they're just using up their virtue. So usually they fall to the lower realms after these states. So cessational absorption is one in which the Hinayana practitioner, is another one, I think it's in the form realm rather than the formless realm, is when in the Hinayana sometimes they think that is a state in which the mind has ceased. They call it cessational absorption. There's another meaning of that cessational absorption in the Mahayana, when we talk about the meaning of emptiness and so forth. But they think it means the gross mind totally ceases for some period of time, and the individual then, when that cessational absorption ends, the person arises, the mental consciousness again manifests. So those are, and not from the Buddhist perception, those are not necessarily enviable states to end up in. So here, our text, it talks about the same subject this way. I'll just quickly say, what's the reason for calling these 5 mental factors, feeling and so forth, omnipresent, or Tibetan kundro? She says, literally, go all. I think you could say always going, or omni, right? Kundro. Present, the word present isn't there. Kundro means always going, always acting, right? Kuntu droa. They are so called because they are mental factors that accompany Jesu droa, to follow after, to go after, all minds. So every consciousness we have will always have these 5. So they're the fundamental ones we have to be familiar with. Furthermore, if any of the 5 omnipresent mental factors are missing, then the utilization, or in other words, the experience of the object will not be complete. The that's not spelled right, is it?
No.
Utilization, it should be UTI. Utilization is this word, when we talk about the utility body of the Buddha, the Sambhogakaya, what do we call it? The enjoyment, right? The enjoyment or utilization of the object will not be complete. For if feeling is absent, there will be no experience, meaning no experience of pleasure, pain, or indifference. If discrimination is absent, there will be no apprehension of the uncommon signs of the objects. You won't recognize it. If intention is absent, the mind will not be directed to the object. If attention is absent, the mind will not be focused on a particular object of observation. If contact is absent, then there would be no support for feeling and the others. Therefore, in order for the utilization or experience of an object to be complete, all 5 omnipresent mental factors must be present without exception. Let's take a break. Took a little time to get you back from tea. It's nice. Look, when it gets cold, it's kind of nice to have some tea, isn't it? I often think, there's something about our centers that hasn't quite emulated the sense of community in, like, Christian and Jewish and Muslim religious centers, So I think that's nice that we have a chance to talk to friends, have some tea, and so forth. Okay, so of the 51 mental factors that are elaborated in the Mahayana Abhidharma, because in the Hinayana Abhidharma there's a slightly different list. I think there's 48 in the Abhidharma Kosha. Not sure. So 51, when you talk about 51, you're talking about the presentation from the Abhidharma Samuccaya, the general Mahayana presentation. Generally the same as the Hinayana presentation, but some slight differences. Now, after we talked about the omnipresent mental factors, there are five other mental factors that are present in any time that you've ascertained an object. You've recognized an object more than just having a general kind of consciousness where you know the object and you've experienced feeling, but you have some kind of understanding of the object. There are five other factors. Here it's called the object ascertaining mental factors. The yul nge nga. Yul means object. Ngepa means to ascertain. You have it right there. Yul nge. Nga is la ngapta nga. You should take a note. It's for you to look up. Go on. Now, one of the translators, John Donne, who'd done an earlier translation of this text, this has gone through, many people have translated this text by Yeshe Gelsen. I think Herbert Gunther, if you have some access to these old books, Herbert Gunther translated this in Mind and Buddhist Psychology, and one of the fellows who translated it with him, I think, works at the California Institute of Integral Studies, or at least was a student, a fellow is a professor there, was a student of Gunther's, and teaches this text using Gunther's arcane terminology, which I can't figure out. Then John Donne did a translation with some other people, and he pointed out, he thought that according to the Sanskrit for this the object ascertaining mental factors, that wasn't the correct way. If you have the notes of that, Venerable, you have notes? I think it's, no, which note it is, number 37 or something, near the end of the text. He said that he thought it should be, it's the past participle, prati niyata vishaya, which in here we're translating as yul sosor ngeba, yungenga, the past participle, not the verbal noun. Therefore, he thought it should not be called object ascertaining. What did he call it?
Oh, you said 37?
I don't know the number. You just have to look at this one. It'll say, keep your finger in the notes there, and look in his translation for this. He calls it will. We call it the first one, aspiration. But under the first thing, just the object ascertaining. The title here is not omnipresent now. These are the next five. They're called 46. You have good eyes. Can you read his note? What does it say? I'm not saying he's right.
No, I can't. It's on
It's even smaller than you thought.
Chanda Katama. No. That's what it has next to
No,
it.
not Chanda.
Okay,
the
wait.
five object ascertaining mental factors, the beginning, the
okay.
title.
Okay, 45. According to Dantine,
Yeah, read the same a little louder. According to an author who wrote some text,
the
translator.
Tibetan and Sanskrit equivalents of this term are Yul So Sor Nepa, Pratniyata Savya,
Vishaya, yeah.
Vishaya.
Mhm.
Note that the common translation, object determining, is incorrect because Nepa is here a past participle, not a verbal noun.
Okay, so how does he translate them? In that, there he translates it the five
Mental states for a determined object.
for a determined object. So anyway, you could play with that if you want. Everyone else I know translates it as object ascertaining mental factors. So he's saying it's not that these ascertain the object, but they are present when an object is ascertained. More or less the same. So there are five. So remember what the omnipresent mental factors were? Who's going to say? Steve? Without looking? Five?
Without looking.
Not out looking. I said without looking.
Feeling,
No,
discrimination.
you're looking. Feeling, discrimination,
Intention.
Attention.
Attention.
attention,
Contact.
contact. Good. And so now this is the next list that would be worth committing to memory because these are very important. Aspiration, belief, or sometimes translated as appreciation. How did he translated that as? He translates it John Donne translated it one place as inclination, and in other places involvement. Neither of them, which I think are good. Belief or appreciation is the second one. First one, aspiration, that we're going to be talking about now. Dunpa is generally, when we talk about prayer and so forth, to aspire. Also, it's kind of like desire, or aspiration for something, wishing for something. Second one, belief or appreciation. The third, fourth, and fifth are very common. Mindfulness, smriti. Mindfulness also could be called recollection, but mindfulness is a good sense in keeping something in mind. It's not just memory. It's the same word, though, for memory in Sanskrit. Meditative stabilization, which is sometimes just called concentration. Sanskrit word, you know what it is? Samadhi. You know samadhi. Is there a rock and roll band called Samadhi? And the fifth one, wisdom, is this word prajna. In Tibetan we say sherab. You know, probably know some Tibetan name sherab, right? So these now, you can see, especially mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom, those sound like the three higher, involved in the evolution of the three higher trainings. Mindfulness comes about particularly because of the higher training of morality, because to keep your vows, you have to be mindful of them, and that also inculcates that particular ability, which acts as a foundation for then concentration, which is another of the higher trainings, and which then acts as a foundation for discriminating awareness, wisdom. If you don't have a concentrated mind, you can't really develop wisdom in its full form. So aspiration, belief or appreciation, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. So let's see. We'll go through these successively again, and we'll continue on Sunday with the rest. So the first one, aspiration, John Donne translated as will. I'm not sure he translated, or one of his graduate students translated part. That's sort of like when you reach a certain status, you have your students translate the text, and then you just go through it and make some. I'm teasing. I hope John is not offended. Okay. Aspiration, also the translator, Steve Batchelor, translated the same way. Regarding the entity of aspiration. So entity, remember, means kind of like its nature or defining characteristic in Tibetan ngo. The compendium of knowledge, that's the higher Abhidharma, the Abhidharma Samuccaya, says, what is aspiration? It is the very wish to be endowed with this or that attribute of a desired thing. It has the function of acting as a support for making effort. That is to say, aspiration, what do I say? Aspiration is the mother of invention. What was it called? The mother of...
Inspiration.
No, I'm saying something else. Necessity is the mother of invention. Yeah, but I'm saying aspiration is the mother. When we talk about developing single-pointed concentration, shine, what do we call shine? Calm abiding, right? That's a particular kind of samadhi. Not all samadhis are calm abiding. Calm abiding is a particular kind of samadhi that we often talk about, fully qualified samadhi. There are 5 faults that have to be overcome. Do you know what those 5 faults are? Or what the first fault is? Dorji knows.
Laxity, excitement.
No, they come later.
Okay.
Laziness. Laziness. And in order to overcome laziness, the first thing you need is some kind of faith that this, that you have to have some confidence that what you're going to engage in is going to have some positive fruits. Then on the basis of faith, you can develop aspiration. It's possible, this is good, this can be done, both different kinds of faith, that it's possible to achieve, and that you should achieve it, faith that it's a good quality. Then you can develop this mental factor, aspiration. I want to develop single point of consciousness. I want to be good. I want to get rid of my anger. Whatever it is, whatever. Somehow it starts from some confidence or faith, first of all, that this is beneficial. Then developing aspiration, desire for that. Then that can lead to effort. That's why I was joking. Aspiration is the mother of invention. What was it? The mothers of invention. That's what I was thinking of.
Frank Zappa.
Frank Zappa. It was one of the two or three bands. I told you once before, I only saw two bands in my life. I think I saw Frank Zappa once in Philadelphia. Frank Zappa and the, what were they called?
Mothers of
The
Invention.
Mothers of Invention. There you go. So what are the other ones of these, the antidotes to laziness? So faith gives rise to aspiration, which gives rise to effort. And what's the fourth one? Effort then gives rise to what's called flexibility or suppleness, which is one of the mental factors, which actually means suppleness of body and mind, which then, lazy, when you have that kind of mind, like Lama Zopa Rinpoche, other great beings, nothing is an impediment due to your laziness. You think, oh, you know, another puja, another page to read for joy. Oh God, is he going to stop? So you won't have that. When you have that kind of supple mind, it's that as though you were sitting before a wall. It's as though you could count. You have the confidence you could count every atom in the world in the wall. You know, you have that kind of suppleness of mind. No problem. You want me to count the atoms in the wall? I just count the atoms. For us, we don't have that kind of suppleness. So those are the antidotes to laziness when we talk about tranquil abiding. And someday maybe we'll have a course on tranquil abiding. But the first comes faith. Then, because of faith, we have aspiration. So aspiration is kind of like here. The way that it's said is it acts as a support for making effort. So for perseverance. Without aspiration. So this is very, very useful for yourself. If you realize you've got a little bit of laziness or you want to achieve something, what you have to develop then is the aspiration for that. That will act as the support, the basis for your perseverance to achieve that goal.
Does the faith is a prerequisite to the aspiration?
So when we're talking about something subtle like tranquil abiding, the benefits, then you need to have faith to here you might just have aspiration. Well, you need some kind of cognition or understanding that the qualities that you want to develop are worthwhile. So you might call that faith or some other. In the case of samadhi, those aren't everyday kind of things that are tangible and easily seen. So it talks about faith. So let's go on. What is aspiration? It is the wish itself. Wish. So aspiration means wish, to be endowed with this or that attribute of a desired thing. It has the function of acting as a support of making effort. As has been said above, it is a knower, cognizer, a mind, that upon observing some intended thing, here it doesn't mean the mental factor intention, it means something that, some intended goal, it seeks it. Dondu Nyerwa means it seeks to achieve something that you wish to achieve. The way in which aspiration acts as a support for effort is as follows in Maitreya's this famous text, the Madhyanta Vibhagna, the discrimination of the middle and extremes. That means, what's the middle way? Because remember, of these 5 texts of Maitreya, some of them, 3 of them were from the Chittamatra point of view. Remember, we were talking in several different places. We will, and we'll talk about the Chittamatra system. So the discrimination of the middle and extreme is from the Chittamatra point of view, but from the Chittamatra point of view, what's the middle way? And what's the extremes are, what is too far one way toward permanence and what is too much the other way toward nihilism. All of the philosophical systems, when they talk about the middle way, they kind of, in the Buddhist, they settle on a middle way that's between the extremes of, let's say when we talk about philosophical view, nihilism and the sense of eternalism or permanence. Something in between. Nihilism, what do we find in the world today? Are there nihilists in the world today? I remember when I was growing up, the Camus and the existentialists were kind of nihilists, right? You know, they just commit suicide. There's nothing to live for. You know. So a nihilistic point of view can mean something just about what comes after this lifetime. That would be a nihilistic view, that there's nothing after this lifetime, so why not commit suicide? Why not just do what you want? A nihilistic philosophical view would mean one that negates too much, says that things don't really exist at all. Everything's an illusion. That would be negating too much, because from a highest philosophical view, phenomena do have some kind of recognizable continuity between cause and effect. Appearances do arise. So negating too much, saying that nothing exists whatsoever, is nihilistic. The other side, permanence, the other extreme of permanence might be the soul exists forever, you know, on a gross sense, you know. Or when we talk about philosophical view, it could mean phenomena really truly exist. So to find the middle way means to find the way not only between asceticism and, what's the opposite of asceticism? Letting it all hang out, or what do you call it? Hedonism. It doesn't mean just that, or subtler views like whether the soul ceases at death or continues forever. But here, it's the final meaning is talking about the view of reality, the ultimate nature of reality, whether phenomena, you know, whether you're negating too much or whether you're not negating enough. Those are the two extremes. So this text by Maitreya, the Madhyanta Vibhanga, has a lot of, in Tibetan we say uta namche. U means center, ta means limit. We had today in class ta, mao, ta a ta, like tar chin, reaching the limit, reaching the end. Ta, uta namche. Namche means distinguishing the middle from the two extremes. What's the middle view from these two extremes? So there's a lot of discussion in that text about how to develop samadhi. If you have a chance to study that, it's very, very interesting. The five faults and all of these things that we're just talking about. And it's talking about, in this context, in that text it says, the support and the supported, and by the support, and that supported by it, and the cause and the result. What does that mean? The support and the supported, the support and that supported by it, and the cause and the result. So we have to see how that's explained in the Lanrim Chemo, which is the next quotation. The great exposition of the stages of the path. If you cannot stop the laziness that is a non-enthusiasm, a lack of enthusiasm toward cultivating meditative stabilization. Remember we were talking about this is the first fault to develop tranquil abiding, right? If you can't stop that laziness, which is a lack of enthusiasm, enthusiastic perseverance toward cultivating that, and that takes joy in that which is contradictory with developing that meditative stabilization, what might be called the discordant class. If you can't eliminate this, if you can't stop it, then from the outset you will not be inclined to engage in meditative stabilization. Right? You won't have the aspiration for it. Even if you do achieve it once, it will quickly degenerate since you will be unable to sustain it. Therefore, it is most crucial to put an end to laziness at the beginning, not at the end. Where's Clayton? Clayton's not here. Okay. I'm just teasing. He's not lazy, but what do you think? Someone who's makes a lot of money, works morning till evening, are they lazy? Always working.
Could be.
Because here, when we talk about laziness, we're talking about enthusiastic perseverance. The opposite of laziness doesn't mean someone who's got a lot of energy to, make money or to find friends or to accumulate influence. It means someone who has enthusiasm to engage in virtue. So laziness has different varieties. There are different kinds of laziness that we'll talk about later. The laziness of dejection. Oh, I can't do anything. I might as well just take it easy. It's just, oh, how could I work for all sentient beings? There's numberless sentient beings. And me, there's a slightly different one also. Not only the goal is so, like, if the bodhisattvas have to work for eons, even for one sentient being, forget it. That would be a kind of laziness. The other kind is the sense of insufficiency of myself. Oh, me, poor me, I'm nothing. Not recognizing that your mind has the ability to change. Slightly related with that kind of laziness. Then the laziness of procrastination, thinking, yeah, that has to be done, but tomorrow. Mañana. And the different kinds of laziness like that. One of the other kinds of main laziness, if you talk about these three, they're sometimes divided 3, 4, 5 lazinesses. The other kind of laziness is attachment to non-virtuous actions. How is that laziness? Wanting to watch TV, wanting to go to the disco, wanting to have the complete collection of the what do you call it?
Grateful Dead.
Grateful Dead. You know, never missing one. Because of attachment in negative, things that are not really beneficial, that is also one of the greatest obstacles to performing virtuous activities. So here, if you don't stop laziness, that is a non-enthusiasm toward cultivating meditative stabilization, and that takes joy. This kind of laziness takes joy in its discord in class, like going to see the deadheads or whatever. Then from the outset, you will be not inclined to engage in meditative stabilization. What happened?
Go see the deadheads. Grateful Dead.
What is a deadhead? Oh, the deadheads are the people who like the deadhead. That's right. Georgie, are you a deadhead?
I used to be.
You used to be a deadhead. One of our friends in Wisconsin who comes to Geshe-Zoba's courses every summer is a big deadhead who used to go around. I know a lot of my friends out here in San Francisco are deadheads or former deadheads. I'm not sure if they're no longer dead, if they reincarnated or what. So even if you do it, if you don't have this kind of, if you don't stop the laziness, even if you do achieve a little bit of concentration once, it will quickly degenerate. Do you have that experience? You have a little bit of concentration, but you don't sustain it, since you'll be unable to sustain it. Therefore, it is most crucial to put an end to laziness at the beginning. So in regard to this, when you attain pliancy, that's what I call suppleness, right? That's the actual antidote to laziness, in which your body and mind are filled with joy and bliss. Laziness will be overcome, since no weariness will arise in your application of virtue all day and night. Whatever, sadhanas one after the other. Joking. That may sound unattractive, but anyway. In order to generate that pliancy, so this is going in reverse order now, just as often. I went from the bottom up, now this is going back from you need to have pliancy to overcome laziness. To generate that pliancy, you must be able to undertake continuous effort in meditative stabilization, the cause for generating pliancy. So you have to have enthusiastic perseverance. You have to engage. And in order to produce that effort, that perseverance, you need a continuous fervent aspiration that seeks meditative stabilization, a wish. As a cause for that aspiration, you must have the stable faith of captivation. Captivating faith, I'm not sure. Due to having seen the excellent qualities of meditative stabilization. So these are the 4 antidotes I mentioned now. I was just talking the order in reverse order. Therefore, for a start, you should meditate again and again on faith that reflects upon the excellent qualities of meditative stabilization, samadhi. I think she's translating samadhi here. Having witnessed the sequence of these through your practice, you will apprehend this excellent essential point with the clearest certainty. So, as a proof for this point, Lama Tsongkhapa, who was the author of this quotation from the Lanrim Chemo that we just read, Tsongkhapa cited in the above passage, as a proof for this point, cited above, in the above passage of the discrimination of middle and extremes. That's this quotation that seemed very mystical here on the last page. The support and that supported by it and the cause and the result. This is talking about this subject. The support, I believe this is Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary, he explains the meaning as follows. The support of aspiration, the support is aspiration, okay? That is the support of enthusiastic perseverance. So what this sort of cryptic text is, the support, and that's supported by it. So what is the support? That's aspiration. What's supported by it? Enthusiastic perseverance, effort. If you have a great wish for something, that's why I was joking before. Aspiration is the mother of invention. Or what's the word you said?
I said the saying is mother, necessity
is the mother of invention. Necessity. So necessity means you want to do something. Usually.
something, so you
Because
have a solution.
generally we don't have, oftentimes we don't have aspiration unless there's a necessity. But some people do. Some people aspire, the so-called the American dream or whatever, which I think is a bit of an aberration. But anyway, I want to become a millionaire. I want to become president. I want to become, the first this or that. So the support is aspiration, the support of striving. The supported is striving or effort. That's supported by it. The cause of aspiration is what? Faith of conviction in excellent qualities. The result of striving is pliancy. So here, this is talking, that little verse from the Madhyanta Vibhanga is talking about these 4 antidotes to laziness. The support, and that's supported by it. So the support of enthusiastic perseverance is aspiration, wish, with this mental factor in a very pure form. All aspiration doesn't have to be virtuous at all. These are neutral mental factors. How about the omnipresent mental factors? Are they virtuous or non-virtuous? I can't ask Karen, you weren't here. What do you think? You mean, say for instance, when you have faith in Buddha or you faith in the Dalai Lama and you're in his presence and you have a pleasant feeling, then that pleasant feeling is neutral? Well, it becomes virtuous by sharing similarities with the virtuous mental factor or non-virtuous mental factor that's in the mind, right? But these mental factors, the omnipresent mental factors, are not virtuous or non-virtuous by their own power. Remember we were talking about doubt the other time, by its own power. Also, these are not virtuous or non-virtuous by their own power. So here, wisdom, there can be positive wisdom and negative wisdom. You can figure out, you can use wisdom, the mental factor here, how to make money, how to avoid paying taxes, how to build a better bomb, how to nuke the enemy. Use that expression? So none of these are virtuous or non-virtuous by their side, but if you apply them, obviously aspiration toward virtuous qualities can then predispose the mind to virtue. Carefully reflecting upon these modes, that is this argument about faith giving rise to aspiration, giving rise to effort, giving rise to pliancy, that kind of ability to do things. Carefully reflecting upon these modes is an especially important essential point of the practice, just as the foremost omniscient one, which refers to Tsongkhapa in the Gelugpa tradition, has said. If you turn your mind inwards and carefully contemplate these modes in which the path has been taught by the great trailblazers to be definite in sequence, without leaving them as mere words, then you will gain certainty regarding these modes. Who are the great trailblazers? San Diego? What are the trailblazers? Is there a football team called Trailblazers? Portland Trailblazers? So does this refer to... No, it's not. The Trailblazers means what? So no, it just Asanga and Nagarjuna, the Trailblazers, because they're the one. This word actually Shinta Chempo or Lam Cheba. What it means is, remember I mentioned the kind of this context is sometimes they call charioteers. So Someone had set out a path in the past. The Buddha had set out some path. But then over time, not being tread well, not being understood well, the plants grow over the road, and someone has to find that again and open it up, blaze the trail. That kind of makes some, maybe trailblazer in our sense means making a new trail that was never there before. So maybe that's not exactly, this means opening up the trail that was already there, that was kind of like lost or overgrown. So they're considered to be Nargajuna, who reopened the middle way, understanding of the middle way, and a Sangha, who reopened the understanding of the mind-only school, the Chittamatra. Yes?
Okay. Now, in the very beginning, where it talks about the trailblazers, it says, greatly renowned as the trailblazers, and then I prostrate to the 6 ornaments. And then down at the bottom,
You're talking about the very beginning of the text?
The introduction.
Right, when we talked about those verses that were...
Right.
Right.
Okay, and then...
So you see some contradiction?
The 6 ornaments, though, they're talking about the 6 ornaments, and that's part of the great trailblazers, aren't they?
No.
Okay, the 6 ornaments are not part of the great trailblazers?
No, the trailblazers...
Okay.
Here, you have been predicted by the Sugata himself, clarified the excellent systems of the profound and extensive, and are greatly renowned as the great trailblazers. This is referring to Nargajuna and Asanga. Also, I prostrate to the 6 ornaments in the 2 supremes. So the 6 ornaments include Nargajuna and Aryadeva, Nargajuna and Asanga. But when you talk about trailblazers in general, depends on the Tibetan there. I'll check. Generally, that refers to just Nargajuna and Asanga. And the 6 ornaments are these. So you have the 2 trailblazers, the 6 ornaments, and the 2 foremost?
The acharyas.
2 acharyas.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll check that. So, if you turn your mind inwards and carefully contemplate these modes in which the path has been taught by the great trailblazers to be definite in sequence, you need to develop first faith, to develop aspiration, to develop effort, to develop pliancy. Without leaving them at mere words, then you will gain certainty regarding these modes. However, if you are keen merely on the words and understand the text of the great trailblazers to be simply some extraneous doctrine or a branch of debate, then you will toss them away when it comes to practice. So there will be no way to gain certainty about these methods, let alone generating the excellent paths that please the conquerors. The conquerors? Please the conquerors in your continuum? What does that mean? Let alone generating the excellent path. Let alone generating the excellent path in your continuum that please the conquerors. That is not the conquerors in your continuum, right? You will not even have the good fortune of having the object that is to be understood dawn to your mind. So a lot of lamas say that it's a sad thing. People that study this kind of study, like in the monasteries, so many, all the Gelugpa tradition, the monks and nowadays more and more the nuns study these kind of texts, but then later they might come to their lama in some little village and say, how do I practice? As though like what they studied was just philosophy. Now they want to know some essential, oral instruction, the quintessential, I'm going to give you open up this little thing and show you and then inspire you. Actually, this is what is to be practiced. What is taught by the trailblazers. And if you don't understand and put into practice these things, you'll be seeking, you'll study all of this and it'll just be mere verbiage. And then later you'll be all excited about some individual so-called meditator who gives some so-called quintessential instruction. To hear those kind of, like say when Trudin Rinpoche or Kirti Sanchap Rinpoche comes and gives quintessential instruction, that always has to be a way of understanding how to put into practice these teachings. You saw what a great scholar Kirti Sanchap Rinpoche was. I mean, all of you that were had his teachings, and also Trudin Rinpoche. incredibly erudite, expert on these things. And then their practice comes out of that by putting into practice what these great beings have delineated, not just looking for some simple kind of recital mani padme hum backwards or something like that. Is that something, that these are just for philosophers and the actual practice is something else. When aspiration is divided, there are three types. There's aspiration that wishes to conjoin or meet with, aspiration wishing to be separated from, and the aspiration that seeks. So this sometimes, when we talk about lifetime, most of our life we wish to meet with pleasure and riches and fame and these various things. That's our wish, our aspiration. We wish to be separated from what? Hot, cold, suffering, loneliness, so forth and so on. Aspiration that seeks is kind of aspiration, I think, in some contexts, that is aspiring for another rebirth, or it could be aspiring to leave samsara. The aspiration that seeks is of many types. The aspiration seeking wishes, the aspiration seeking wishes, aspiration seeking views, and so forth. Let's see if Geshe, if the text that Geshe-la translated and was translated helps a little bit here. Aspiration is a distinct mental factor that, having focused upon the intended object, takes a strong interest in it. It has the function of acting as the basis for enthusiasm. So if you want to develop aspiration, wish, to aspire for virtuous qualities, you have to focus on something that is intended and take a strong interest in developing it, in achieving that. What's going to develop the strong interest to achieve that? Some kind of faith or some kind of experience. Remember when we were talking about here about samadhi, some kind of faith, because qualities like samadhi are not things that we can see the benefits with directly. But there's some things that you aspire for in life. You see, it's like worldly people aspire for wealth because they see other people, like Uncle Charlie worked hard, made $1 million. I can do the same thing. I want to have that. So developing that aspiration from actually seeing something. Aspiration doesn't have to come obviously from faith alone, but talking about subtle qualities, those are not things that are as tangible. So that's based on, as a basis on faith. Am I making sense? How do you know I'm making sense?
Is this the Tibetan class?
You haven't understood a word. You thought I was speaking Tibetan. In general, any wish or yearning to obtain a particular object is an aspiration. So this word is in general used. Aspiration is any kind of, any wish that we have in our mind is an example of this mental factor aspiration. Sometimes when we, like for instance, when we dedicate our merits, that is an activity of aspiration. The actual word for prayer in Tibetan, do you know what the word for prayer is?
Monlam?
Monlam. Monpa is very similar to this. Monpa means to wish also or to aspire in a similar way. So it's sometimes called the path of aspiration. You're praying, may that come about, may this come about, wishing. And that kind of state of mind predisposes karma to ripen, virtuous karma to ripen, if you are praying for virtuous things. It's not as though if you pray hard enough, how do you say, God will answer your questions. He's just sort of sitting up there until you pray hard enough. I'm not going to answer your question, but if you do enough, that request is that's what we think in the world, an analogy to the world. You ask Father enough times, you're kind, you bring him gifts. Finally, he'll accede to your wish, your prayer. But that's not what prayer means in this context. prayer, path of aspiration. It doesn't use the exact word here, dunpa, aspiration, but it's similar to that. Prayer means a kind of a conditioning of your mind through aspiring again and again towards some goal. That kind of aspiration causes your karma for that, to experience that, to begin to ripen. And that's one of the efficacies of that. The Bodhisattvas engage in all of the, like when we studied the King of Prayers, the Bodhisattvas engage in all different kinds of prayers to help to ripen their karma of the past right now. It's not as though someone else is going to provide what they want. By praying for it, when they have the ability, that can cause their karma that is on their mind stream to ripen very quickly and to manifest now. In general, any wish or yearning to obtain a particular object is an aspiration. Depending upon the nature of that object or goal, the aspiration becomes wholesome and constructive, or it becomes unwholesome and destructive, depending upon the goal, the object or goal. It is thus important to learn which objects are worthy of aspiration and which are not. There's a threefold classification of aspiration, which is like this threefold. Aspiring to encounter, now how did we have here? Wishing to meet. So here it adds some words to that. Encounter again what has passed. Okay, that means to, well, in some cases you may not have encountered it this lifetime. You know, you want to find success or love or something like that, or to meet with that which you have separated from. Aspiring not to be separated from what one is experiencing at present, wishing not to be separated. I think I might have said before, wishing to be separated from something else incorrectly. And aspiring to achieve a certain goal in the future. So this is talking about these three in terms of times. To aspire to meet again with what you experienced in the past, to not be separated from what you're experiencing now, and to aspire for that which one hopes to meet in the future. It can be further divided into four types: a strong interest in an object of sensual desire, a strong interest in a material object, strong interest in a particular opinion or view, strong interest, and a strong interest in liberation. This word interest means the wish to achieve or to perpetuate. So strong interest or aspiration in a particular view or opinion might be could be negative, could be like opinionatedness. Okay? So this is the first of the 5, if we want to call them object ascertaining mental factors. Let's introduce the next one before we finish. Next one, our text is translated as belief, mepa, adi moksha. Belief. I'm not sure belief. To me, it's more like appreciation, because you'll see from the definition, perhaps it's talking about developing an appreciation for something which you've already experienced in the past. That's how this is translated here also, appreciation. So belief or appreciation. John Donne had translated it, in the outlines he translated it as inclination, but in the text itself, involvement. And neither of them give me much of a taste. What is belief? What is appreciation? It holds an ascertained thing, that means something which you've already recognized, to be just the way it has been ascertained. It has the function of non-captivation. Non-captivation. Let me read you what the translation here says. This is a different definition, but meant to cover the same thing. Appreciation is a distinct mental factor that stabilizes the cherished apprehension of a previously ascertained object. Stabilizes the cherished apprehension of a previously ascertained object. So something which you've previously ascertained, which was desirable, something that you cherished, it stabilizes that. So it's, to me, appreciation is a good meaning.
That's different than belief.
Sometimes mupa can mean, yeah.
It's different than this
Okay.
definition, isn't it?
No, it's meant to be the same word. They're translating as belief here.
But appreciation tends to have a positive quality, you know, like you're holding on to something pleasant.
Right.
Belief is just, it is the way it is, good or bad.
Yeah, so that's maybe if you have that understanding from belief, you have to augment it. Any particular word doesn't have to be imbued with all the baggage that we have associated with it. If you look in the dictionary, maybe belief may have mainly that kind of sense, but there are other meanings of belief that are a little more encompassing. Just like when people talk about confession, they don't like to use the word confession for the Buddhist practice because there's so much baggage associated with that word with Christianity or other religions. You know, confession, give me a break. I don't want anything to do. Whereas the Buddhists, we could translate it as confession. Maybe we want to use a different word so we're not involved with that baggage. So here the important thing is to try to understand the meaning, and then you yourself can choose what word you like. You could call it abracadabra. Whatever you like. It doesn't matter. There's nothing.
It's just the meanings seem to be different between that.
Well, let's check. This is what our class is about. We're trying to understand. Let me just finish the definition. It hasn't finished yet. I'll read it again, the first part. Appreciation is a distinct mental factor that stabilizes the cherished apprehension of a previously ascertained object and does not allow the mind to be distracted by anything else. Sounds pretty much like appreciation, huh? Something which was previously cherished, a previously cherished apprehension of something, and does not, it stabilizes that, keeps that sense of cherished value to something, the valueness of something, it's appreciating it, and it does not allow the mind to be distracted by anything else. Thus, it has the function of cherishing the object and securing the recollection of it. Without appreciation of some quality in something, it's hard to keep it in mind if you don't see the quality of something. Why keep it in mind? Maybe you keep it in mind because you're forced to, or you're being paid to. I don't know. But there would be some appreciation. Oh, you've come back. You disappeared just when we were talking about the mental factor laziness.
I was being diligent.
You were being diligent. Okay, good. Okay. So let's come back to this. We're not finishing this today. This is just a first take on appreciation. On Sunday we're going to go into more detail, but let's just look at it again, a first take, so to speak. We'll use Geshe's Raptins first. Appreciation of an object only follows after the object's qualities have been ascertained as being worthwhile or valuable. Appreciation. It's talking about, your appreciation of something, yeah. Could be appreciating that fire is hot and should be avoided. Doesn't have to be like, I appreciate good tea, but I don't appreciate bad tea. Yeah? Once appreciated in this way, the mind will be far more inclined to pursue a certain form of behavior in order to either obtain the object or realize a goal embodied in or otherwise related to the object. In the practice of Dharma, appreciation is an essential element for the meaningful state of faith and confidence. So remember we said faith was a prerequisite for aspiration. So in a sense, this kind of appreciation can give rise to that aspiration, give rise to the faith. You could call it belief in that sense. At first, doesn't belief precede faith in a certain sense? In a certain kind of belief as appreciation. The stronger one's appreciation of the natures and characteristics of the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, for example, the stronger one's appreciation or belief in the natures, if you want, for example, the stronger will be one's faith in their infallibility and the stronger one's motivation to realize one's spiritual goals. Couldn't I just put belief in there also? The stronger one's belief in the natures and characteristics of the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, because you don't yet have a direct realization. Here, the word belief is not the one that we talked about when we talked about correct belief in the 7 ways of knowing. Right? This is a different word. So in Möpa means to like appreciative belief. Maybe you can make some compound with both of the words in it. The stronger will be one's faith in their infallibility, and the stronger one's motivation to realize one's spiritual goals. In fact, the Buddha himself, in the sutra requested by Sagaramati, has said that appreciation is the very root of all that is wholesome. There are limitless forms of appreciation, since the objects appreciated by the limitless sentient beings are infinite. Well, this is a double whammy, isn't it? Limitless sentient beings, the objects appreciated by the limitless sentient beings are infinite. But in brief, we can talk about 2 kinds of appreciation. Those that are mistaken, and those that are realistic or are appropriate. So let's see again what this text says, and then we're going to just about run out of time. So this thing, what is appreciation? What is belief? And I'll see if I can, I'll look at the Tibetan and see if I can retranslate what she translates here, because it sounds almost different here. It's not so clear. It holds an ascertained thing, something that was previously ascertained, to be just the way it has been ascertained. It is that way. Is what it's emphasizing. It has the function of I'm not sure what it means, the function of non-captivation. Maybe that comes here. Just as been said above, it is a knower that holds the object that has been ascertained by its valid cognition thinking. It is just like this and not otherwise. So belief might work for that kind of taste of it. Here its function is specified as non-captivation, because when one has gained firm belief in the object that one has ascertained, an opponent cannot steer one away from it. In other words, not another person, if you have belief in something or appreciation for something, appreciation may not be as strong as belief when you talk about this, in its ability to keep you from being seduced away. Do you know what I'm saying? If you really have maybe appreciation or belief in something, it depends if you're talking about qualities or if you're talking about views and so forth, which word works better for you. So when it says it has the function of non-captivation, that means function of not being captivated by others, not being seduced by others, not losing your cherish nature of that. For example, reflecting upon the difference between the Buddhist and the non-Buddhist teachers in the context of going for refuge, one analyzes which is an infallible refuge. This is what you do if you were talking about the Buddhist refuge and non-Buddhist refuge. Non-Buddhist refuges might be the god Indra, the gods of the desire realm, Brahma. It might be money. That's the only refuge, brother. Plastics. What was it? Do I remember the father told Dustin Hoffman in that? Plastics. Not joking. Something that you can take refuge in. Then when the doctrine taught by him, Buddha, and the spiritual community properly practicing this doctrine are also ascertained by valid cognition to be infallible refuges, a firm belief or appreciation in them as final refuges is gained. Thereupon, forders, that means non-Buddhists who ford false paths to liberation, the Tirthakas, where the forders and so forth cannot lead, thereupon forders and so forth cannot lead one astray, and one has then joined the ranks of Buddhists. So one's faith is based on this kind of aspiration or appreciation. Based upon this, all wholesome qualities will increase. Furthermore, in the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, Shantideva's famous text, if you want to check another translation, it's chapter 7, verse 40, it says, the Muni, that means Shakyamuni, has taught that belief is the root of all that belongs to the class of virtue. Remember, Geshe Rapton mentioned in the Saramgati Sutra, the Buddha said this. The Muni has taught that belief is the root, appreciation is the root of all that belongs to the class of virtue, the virtuous class. And the root of that is constant meditation on the fruitional results. What does that mean? What are the fruitional results? The root of that means what? The root of belief or the root of the class of virtue? Something to think about. So, okay, we're continuing. So we'll go over this. We'll begin with belief on Sunday, and maybe I think we'll easily finish the five object ascertaining, and we'll begin then with what comes next. The virtuous mental factors. That's good. Probably better we do the virtuous mental factors before the non-virtuous. Oftentimes you hear a lot about the non-virtuous mental factors, right? Venerable? And sometimes maybe you don't know what the virtuous mental factors are in order to know what to cultivate. You know what to eliminate, but you don't know what to accentuate. Pardon? Right. If you notice that, or that other people have, you can rejoice in their good qualities also. Okay. So let's dedicate the merit. Dedication is an application of this mental factor, aspiration. It's aspiring that the virtuous roots of merit that we've created now, wishing that they have a particular result in the future. And that modifies that karma. It can cause that karma to ripen in the way that we wish. It's the example that's given in the teachings often is like what do you call it, the reins? The bride? What's the bridle? The bridle is different than the reins. The reins. The bridle is what's on the... Yeah? So the reins of the horse. If you just let the horse by itself, it'll just go down to the clover field, down by the river, or wherever you don't want to go. So you have to... Maybe you want to go to maybe you want to go to the clover field down by the river, I don't know. But by pulling the reins in a particular way, this is like aspiration, you can cause that karma to ripen in ways that, well, within what is realistic, to ripen in ways that you wish. So we dedicate. Dedication means aspiring, wishing. So this is an application of this mental factor. The three elements, as we've said many times, the merits to be dedicated, the goal that we wish or aspire that these merits become the cause of, and the actual act of dedication, the act of aspiration, which we meditate separately on the emptiness of those three things. We call the emptiness of the three spheres. In this case, the emptiness of the karma, the emptiness of the goal being dedicated to, and the emptiness of the actual act of aspiration. Where can you find it? The act of dedication. It's just a name that we label to this particular sequence of events. So let's do that. Let's make, first of all, the conventional dedication, which is aspiring that the virtue that we've created tonight, the virtue that we've created in the past, even the virtue we've created in the future, ripen in such a way that would please the great bodhisattvas, Manjushri, Samantabhadra, who we emulate their behavior in the bodhisattvas, that made these karma ripen in such a way that we'll actually very soon engage in these great bodhisattva deeds, overcoming our laziness, our self-interest, developing altruism and real love for others, compassion for them, due to this merit. So thinking the merit that we've created, aspiring that it ripen, become the cause of that particular result, not just ripen in samsaric pleasure alone. when one does aspirational prayers, one says again and again many different kinds of aspirations like that. Now think of the dedication within the sphere of emptiness, the emptiness of the three spheres, to dedicate this merit so that the merits themselves cannot be destroyed. Not only will they not be exhausted until the goal comes, but this will prevent their accidental destruction by anger or wrong view or abandoning the Dharma and so forth. So the merits that we've created, although they do function, they don't exist the way that our mind solidly thinks of them as some real findable entity. The merits that we've created are merely imputed by the mind to those sequence of events that created that virtue. So to let go, see it as kind of appearing, but not like an illusion, but not existing findably the way that we conceive of it. The goal, our sequentially practicing the Bodhisattva path, like the great Bodhisattvas, Manjushri and Samantabhadra and so forth, achieving all of the six perfections, working for the welfare of sentient beings, becoming a real inspiration to others, that goal also, achieving ultimately enlightenment, is just a name conceptually designated to that collection of parts, that state, that basis of designation. There's nothing findable from its own side, but still it functions. And the state of dedication that we're doing now, this aspiration, aspiring that this karma ripen in that way by this person, this dedicator. Also, the person is empty, the act of dedication is empty of existing the way that it appears, truly findable from its own side. The only way that it exists is merely as a designation by the mind in terms and concepts, the only kind of reality, otherwise totally empty and vacuous, but still functions.